Welcome to the 12 Report with Blessings Musugu, and these are the headlines. At least 31 dead as Israel-Hezbollah exchange strikes. President Tinubu to meet police council to confirm Disu. INEC Chairman Amupitan warns 2027 polls won't be perfect. And we have our reporters stationed in different parts of the country and beyond. We have Bettina Unweli and Aisha Saliu joining from Abuja. Umori Kirawa is on standby in Borno State, while Amenze Bazwaye is on standby in Edo, and Afia Hagen joins from London. Let's begin now with updates on the Middle East tension, where Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon killed at least 31 people on Monday following rocket attacks by Tehran-backed militant groups, Hezbollah, after Iran Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed. Lebanon's health ministry reported 20 deaths in Beirut's southern suburbs and 11 in southern towns, with 149 wounded. Hezbollah claimed responsibility for overnight strikes on an Israeli army site south of Haifa, citing retaliation for Khamenei's death. Israel's military vowed to intensify attacks, saying the group chose the Iranian regime over the state of Lebanon. Meanwhile, Lebanon's President Joseph Aoun has convened an emergency cabinet meeting after a sharp escalation between Hezbollah and Israel. The strikes followed overnight rocket and drone attacks claimed by Hezbollah targeting an Israeli military site near Haifa. The group said the assault was retaliation for the killing of Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei during a reported joint U.S.-Israeli operation. In the meantime, U.S. President Donald Trump claims American military strikes sunk 9 Iranian naval vessels and largely destroyed Iran's naval headquarters. Posting on his Truth Social account, Trump said some of the ships were relatively large and important and vowed to target the rest, warning that they will soon be floating at the bottom of the sea. Trump added in a tone mixing boast and irony that aside from the attacks, their navy is doing very well. No independent verification of the strike's impact has been reported. And for more on this, I'm now joined by our senior international correspondent and anchor, Afia Hagen. Also joining us to discuss this is a geopolitics analyst, Yemi Fajemisi. Afia, what is the stated objective of the U.S.-led strikes on Iran? How has the campaign evolved into its third consecutive day?
These strikes are broadening. You mentioned there the strikes in Lebanon as well. So the US presented the first day of strikes, as you will, as defensive and preventative. That was aimed at eliminating imminent threats from Iran and degrading their capabilities. And then into the second day, the operation broadened. The Washington Post saying that US Central Command struck over 1,000 targets. And now into day 3, we have the cycle of action and retaliation. And of course, let's not forget that throughout this, we do have Iran retaliating to all these strikes that the Americans are making. So Iran striking US bases in Oman, in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, and striking a British base in Cyprus as well. And so we're in this third day of this war, if you will, of this conflict. And the objective of the United States remains the same, that it's all about targeting Iran and targeting those imminent threats. And like I said, we have this cycle now of action and retaliation.
All right. Let me ask Yemi this question. Now, with Israel and Hezbollah exchanging deadly strikes, how likely is this conflict to escalate into a broader regional war in the Middle East?
Expected that Hezbollah is going to respond this way because Hezbollah, they see Ayatollah Khamenei as their divine leader. So not to respond will look a bit awkward. So I think it's kind of expected that they're going to respond this way. The wider issue, though, rests with the response of the President Trump to the Iran, the strikes itself, which is a bit of a complicated issue, because what they're saying now is the Americans clearly want a regime change. They say that's their objective. However, we don't know how that's going to turn out, because they're expecting the Iranians to take up to the streets. And one of the reasons why I think that's not happened yet is because Iran is very complicated. There's a reason why many US presidents have not done this in ages. They've contemplated it. And Iran is a country of 90 million people. About half of that 90 million supports the regime of the Khamenei regime. Another half probably don't even support that. So we have this complexity around Iran, and many Iranian population are quite young. Because of that, they understand their history. And when I say they understand their history, they understood the moment where the UK and the US toppled their prime minister back then and installed the Shah of Iran. So on one hand, part of the population actually don't like the Khamenei regime. At the same time, they don't trust the Western countries as well. Because when President Trump is saying they want a regime change, but we don't know their plan towards that regime change. And things like this could cause a bit of chaos. We should all remember the Libya situation as well. Iran doesn't even have a clear opposition at hand. Now we're seeing news that America said they eliminated 48 of their leaders. So if you do that, who's going to be the next people to negotiate with? It could be somebody even as more than worse than Khamenei. It could be somebody moderate. So we're walking on a very dangerous path now. So there's complexity around all these things. So only time will tell how it's all going to play out.
All right. Let me come back to Afia now. Tehran has publicly declared that it will not negotiate with the United States. What conditions are Iranian leaders setting, if any, for potential diplomatic engagement?
I think at the moment, Tehran said they won't negotiate with the United States while they are under attack, right? So at the moment, whilst the United States is in this conflict, is in this offensive against Iran, there will be no talks because they feel that there will be talks under coercion. So at the moment, there is no room for negotiation. But let's remember that this time last week, Blessings, you and I were talking about the fact that the United States and Iran were round the table in Geneva. The talks were going on about Iran and their nuclear weapons and disarming and enrichment issues that the United States were very concerned about. Talks were happening this time last week. Those talks clearly broke down, and here we are. But coercion won't be the way to get Tehran to the table. The United States, yes, putting pressure on with weapons, also with sanctions. I think, like my colleague so rightly said, at the moment, we have no idea who is going to be the new Ayatollah. Or the new Ayatollah could already be installed and we just don't know who that is. Let's remember that Iran is going to be very much prepared for this moment, have been prepared, will be prepared for this moment. You know, the amount of people that they have to come behind to fill in these positions runs very deep. The person who may take his job may not be open to any kind of negotiation with the United States. We could have a more hardline leader, we could have a more moderate leader. But whilst Iran is being bombed by the United States in this way, there is going to be no room for negotiation. I think it will only be when when the United States says our offensive is over, that potentially they could come back to the table.
All right, let me come back to Yemi now. Is there a real possibility of a conflict destabilizing countries that actually host African migrants? And what could be the long-term political implications for the continent?
Well, I'm not aware personally of, because we know what Iran does best. They export violence. They're experts in exporting violence and having proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I don't know if they have any strong foothold in Africa as opposed to their any militia. I suspect they may have militia around Somalia, the Horn of Africa. That's a possibility there. So, but in the broader sense, in terms of Africa, one thing that Africa could gain economically will be the price in oil. The price in oil is going to obviously change. So oil-producing countries like Nigeria could benefit from that. But in terms of security, it could escalate. No one knows what the Iranian regime is going to look like. It could be something where the Somalian militia there, the Al-Shabaab, may be taking advantage of these things. One thing that is actually important here to note as well is people smugglers are going to exploit this situation. So we're going to have a case of migration issues even across the world. The Europeans will be worried as well. Africans will be worried as well, because there's going to be people smugglers taking advantage of all this, exploiting this situation for their own gain. But one thing I need to stress is Iran, what they're doing now is that they're expanding their bombing campaigns to all other Gulf region. And the reason why they're doing that is because they think if they do that, they can force all these people, all these countries to talk to America to back down. Why they are making that kind of policy, no one knows, because it doesn't make sense to me to keep creating enemies by bombing your neighbors in order to force them to talk to the American government. But in terms of Africa, no one knows. The only group I know that is kind of sympathetic to the Iranian regime is around the Horn of Africa, which is Al-Shabaab group in Somalia. So time will tell how it's going to all play out.
Okay, Afia, the conflict has now spilled into Lebanon with Israeli strikes on Hezbollah, and at least 31 people have been killed. What are the risks of this escalating into a full-blown Israel and Hezbollah war?
So when it comes to Israel and Hezbollah, that has been a proxy war that has been going on for so long. In terms of this spreading out into the rest of the Middle East and that into a growing war, that is a huge risk at the moment. We have already seen the US targets being hit across different countries, Oman, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait as well. I think if we continue down this path, if the United States continues down this path and Israel continues down this path, also striking targets in Hezbollah, and they will want to take it their proxies across the region, then yes, we are at every risk of the spreading into a full-blown conflict with civilian displacement. You've got evacuation warnings all the time as well. Lebanon's internal politics as well can become a flashpoint. Lebanese leaders have openly criticized Hezbollah for dragging the country into this conflict. And so, yes, there is a risk that this could spill over. Whilst the US and whilst Israel are taking advantage of this moment, then yes, it could draw in the rest of the countries around the Middle East. Absolutely.
All right, Afia Hagan and Yemi, thank you so much for lending your voices to this conversation, and definitely we're coming back to have it. We're not done yet, but we want to go on a quick break. We're still live on the 12 Report. We're going to break now. When we come back, this conversation and many more continue. Stay with us. Well, News Central is still closely following the Middle East tensions, and discussing this, I am still joined by senior international correspondent and anchor Afia Hagan, and of course, we also have a geopolitics analyst, Yemi Fajamisi, who has been here and has been doing justice to this conversation. Yemi, let me come to you with my next question. Could the involvement of American forces increase the likelihood of the war drawing in more global powers?
Yeah, thank you for that. Personally, I don't think so. And why did I say that? We must remember that Trump didn't even get approval from the U.S. Congress before doing this. So there's a lot of debates going on in America as well. Number one, Americans are saying Trump didn't prepare the American public for this war. And second, American Congress are saying Trump needs approval before engaging in any kind of war. And number three, there was no UN legal backing for the war as well. So if we get to a situation where there are U.S. soldiers' bodies coming back home with U.S. flags, that could be of a tension for Trump as well at home domestically. And also we know that China kind of supports Iran publicly. I wouldn't say China come out publicly to say that, but on the background, China is sympathetic to the cause of Iran. Also, we know Iran also supplies Vladimir Putin all his drones to attack Ukraine. So there's a Russia and Iran. So Russia and China behind the scenes supports Iran. So I don't see any global power joining the war. What global power probably will be looking at to kind of de-escalate issue and do a bit of mediations behind the scenes, not to make things much more complicated.
Okay, let me come back to Afia now. What has the UK government under Prime Minister, or why rather, has the UK government under Prime Minister Keir Starmer agreed to let the US use British military bases for defensive strikes targeting Iranian missile sites?
Well, yes. So this announcement came earlier or over the weekend that the UK was going to allow the United States to use its defense bases across the world to launch this attack on Iran. Now, the United Kingdom has been very adamant to say that they did not allow the United States to use their bases in that initial wave. But this decision has come now in a defensive posture because now you have targets or US bases being targeted, and near those US bases you have UK citizens, for instance, in the United Arab Emirates. So now they're coming from a defensive posture and saying that because you have these targets being hit, it's now in the interest of the United Kingdom to stand with the United States and to help protect British interests abroad, essentially. And that's what they're saying. So they're already in this defensive posture. There's this self-defensive posture rather that they are taking to be able to justify this. They've explicitly explained the legality framing around this in collective self-defense and international law, and because it was an allied request, that's why they could do that. Let's also remember that you had a UK base in Cyprus being hit, and that was another reason why they decided to change their tone as well. That under international law, they can stand with their allies and they can say that UK bases can be used by United States forces. So they're very keen to emphasize that they're not joining an offensive war on Iran, but they will enable limited strikes to reduce missile threat that's already landing across the region and endangering Britons. That is the line that the United Kingdom are taking.
Right. Yemi, with the UK government agreeing to let the US use British military bases for defensive strikes targeting Iranian missiles, what do you then foresee?
Right. For my eyes, I don't. It's kind of expected that Keir Starmer was going to do that because it's in a very difficult position that the UK under Keir Starmer, because they're trying to learn from history of the Iraq War when Tony Blair joined President Bush there. A lot of British public don't want to be involved in any war. However, it will be a bit awkward for Keir Starmer not to publicly say he supports what Americans are doing. So that's why they've kind of made it clear that although we're not going to do any strikes on Iran, we're out of it, but we're going to support by letting you use the UK base. So only time will tell, to be honest. I can't really know. I don't know any prediction in terms of that.
All right. Well, we want to say a big thank you to geopolitics analyst Yemi Fajemisi, and of course, our international correspondent and anchor Afia Hagen, who has been following this story and will be bringing us more updates in no time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now to more stories. President Bola Tinubu is set to convene a meeting of the Nigeria Police Council on Monday at the presidential villa to deliberate on the appointment of Olatunji Disu as the substantive Inspector General of Police. The meeting is in line with constitutional and statutory provisions which require the council's review and endorsement before the president formally transmits the nominee's name to the Senate for confirmation. The Nigeria Police Council comprises key stakeholders, including state governors and senior government officials, and plays an advisory role in the appointment of the Inspector General. Now, News Central's State House correspondent, Bettina Nweli, joins us with more details. Bettina, what more can you tell us about the significance of this meeting and the expected next steps?
Thank you very much. Blessings. Well, the president is expected to convene a meeting of the Nigerian Police Council sometime today to consider the appointment of Olatunji Disu as the substantive Inspector General of Police. Now, this meeting is in statutory requirements, mandating the council's review of the nomination before the president forwards his name to the Senate for confirmation. Now, the Police Council, chaired by the president, comprises of the 36 governors of the states in Nigeria, the chairman of the Police Service Commission, and the Inspector General of Police. Now, should this confirmation be positive, Olatunji Disu will emerge as the 23rd indigenous Inspector General of Police in the country.
All right, Bettina Nweli there giving us an update on the new leadership of the Nigerian police and definitely how this reflects on the people and the security status of the country. Now, troops of the Joint Task Force Northeast Operation Hadin-Kai have repelled a series of coordinated terrorist attacks on military positions in Borno State, killing several insurgents and recovering weapons and equipment. The attacks, attributed to fighters of the Islamic State West Africa province, targeted forward operating bases at Mayanti, Gajingiya and Gajinram between the late hours of 28 February and the early hours of 1st of March. The media information officer of the operation Hadin-Kai, Lieutenant Colonel Saniuba, in a statement said the failed assault reflected mounting pressure on the terrorist enclaves, supply routes and leadership structures as troops sustain aggressive offensive operations across Sector 2. In Lagos, residents of the Oshodi, Mafoluku, Shogunle and Iwu-Titu have taken to the streets to protest what they describe as the growing activities of hoodlums terrorizing their communities. They say the persistent attacks have left many residents with sleepless nights, while others have suffered injuries and loss of property. Chairman of the association, Babatunde Faleye, says the situation is becoming unbearable, calling on the Lagos State government and security agencies to urgently intervene. Residents are now appealing to state authorities to restore peace and ensure the safety of lives and property in the affected areas.
But some of them, yes, can be identified, which is why we have beckoned on victims to come forward today. Such that their testimonies will be first-hand taken by security agencies, and they can see to it that it will help their investigation and help get these perpetrators booked. The spread of this violence in the past week gone by had been very, very one too many. Like, you have 3 pockets of incidents happening at a go. So where do they react to first became an issue. As a matter of fact, there's a division here at Oshodi that doesn't have a functional vehicle. So how do you respond? What's your response time if you don't have a means to transport yourself?
For the past 3 months, almost every blessed day, we encounter one target to another. They macheted people. In fact, they vandalized people's property.
Mi ṣiṣẹ́ láti gbà yẹn till now. Ó ti ń nísìnyí tó yá bẹ̀rẹ̀ ìjà tán jẹ́jà yẹn tán bà mọ́tò mi jẹ́. Ó ti ń lọ bí ọ̀sẹ̀ bíi ó ti ń kọjá ọ̀sẹ̀ mẹ́ta.
I saw people run. I was waiting for bike to come so I can take bike and go to my house. I saw people coming, running. I was just like, what happened? I just started following. I just started running with them, not knowing that they were fighting. As soon as I look at my hand, I saw that they are very cut my hand. And it was a deep cut.
Wọ́n wá sílé, wọ́n wá sínú company, wọ́n wọnú company, wọ́n pọ̀ tán kàdà dání kò gbẹ̀ dání. Wọ́n yọ plasma, wọ́n gbé generator, wọ́n mú iPhone 7 Plus. Gbogbo drum blue yẹn ni wọ́n fi àdá ṣá, gbogbo pọ́ọ̀tù nǹkan kan gbogbo ẹ̀ ni wọ́n ṣá, wọ́n bà nǹkan jẹ́ gan, gbogbo ẹ̀ wà lórí phone tá camera sílẹ̀.
Both the pocket that I'm putting my money for, then spoil everything, then carry all my money. I even have the video for here. So please, I don't know what I'm doing. Then wreck me down.
Many thanks for staying with us. Now, troops of the Joint Task Force Northeast Operation Hadinkai have repelled series of coordinated terrorist attacks on military positions in Borno State, killing several insurgents and recovering weapons and equipment. Right now, News Central's Omori Kirawa is on standby to give us more update on this. Kirawa, can you confirm the scale of the coordinated ISWAP attacks on the forward operating bases in Mayati, Gajingana and Gajiram?
Very unfortunate incident that welcomed citizens of Borno in the early days of March, which we saw attack in different locations. First is the Mayati, which also led to the killing of several terrorists, and that of Gajiram too. The troops were able to deal with the terrorists, as so many of them were killed in Gajiram. And it's same for the other locations. But it's quite unfortunate that we are seeing the death of high-ranking commanders, frontline commanders, particularly that one of Mainti, which is presently, based on information we are hearing, the commander has been killed by the insurgents amidst action to ensure the protection of the location. But the good thing is that the Nigerian military and other armed forces are fully in control of their various areas of responsibility. However, these insurgents and terrorists, particularly those that are marauding the areas of the Lake Chad, are bringing attacks, largely unaware on the side of the military.
So there are reports that Army Major UI Mariga and several soldiers were killed. Can you verify these claims on the ground?
Well, so far what we know based on the intelligence and information shared by the media information of the military is that, yes, one of the commanders is dead and other military officers were wounded and they were taken to hospitals and they are receiving treatment. But by and large, the armed forces were able to contain the situation. In fact, they have recovered large quantity of equipment and weapons from the terrorists. And as we speak now, the areas are calm, but highly unpredictable.
So what is the current situation at the affected military positions, and how are troops managing security after these attacks?
Well, the military has made a clear statement that it will continue to deal with terrorists, particularly those in hideouts, those in the Sambisa forest and other parts of state, which are causing havoc, which their intention now is targeting military base, military spots, where armed forces are well equipped, where armed forces are providing security to the communities. So the military is saying that efforts are being put in place to ensure the safety and security of citizens and the areas.
All right. I mean, with this situation, how has this affected the people in that area, Kirawa?
Well, it's something that the people have, it's something that is abnormal that has become normal to so many people, but it's quite unfortunate. Business activities are going on because of the resilience of the people. I mean, there are communities that 94 people were slaughtered, and now the community, everything is back. People are farming, people are going, doing their businesses, and so on and so forth.
All right, Omori Kirawa there on the Northeast security issue, and definitely he's still on ground to give us more updates as it unfolds. Now to electoral matters. Nigeria's electoral umpire says it has the capacity to electronically transmit results for the 2027 general elections, though it cannot guarantee a 100% perfect vote. The chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, Prof. Joash Amupitan, highlighted challenges in real-time result transmission from remote areas, citing delays in the FCT area council elections. He stressed that logistics, voter education, and institutional transparency are key to credible polls. INEC is reviewing political party regulations to align with the new Electoral Act 2026, strengthen compliance and reduce disputes. The Commission remains optimistic that increased awareness and demand for accountability will make 2027 Nigeria's best election yet. Now, as Nigeria edges towards the 2027 general elections, the spotlight is on the ruling All Progressives Congress. Speaking on Breakfast Central, APC National Chairman Nentawe Yilwata defended the party's record on the economy, security and reforms, while addressing concerns about rising living costs and the strength of opposition politics ahead of the next electoral cycle.
36 governors. We have only 109 senators. We have only 350 House of Representative members. We have just about 1,000 plus House of Assembly members across the country. Now, when you put all these numbers together of National Assembly, House of Representatives, commissioners, and all those put together across the country, there are no more than 5,000. Assuming all of them even come to APC, there is 5,000 out of 230 million Nigerians. I don't want Nigerians to, and especially media, to push the narrative that only the governors and only political appointees that holds the premium of political party. Each of the 18 political parties in Nigeria have their structures. Their structures starting from their own membership on ground. Each of them keep on boasting, and they present to INEC their own membership register, amounting into millions of people that are members of their political parties. They also have the EXCO at the ward level, at the local government level, at the state level. And when you put this membership of the EXCO alone, it runs into at least.
All right, we did mention earlier regarding the INEC elections that despite the body's ability to electronically transmit the results, we still cannot guarantee a perfect 2027 elections. Our correspondent Aisha Saliu was at the meeting and will bring us more details of this event that transpired. Aisha, good afternoon to you. Can you give us a summary of key takeaways from the meeting?
Well, Blessings, I would say yesterday's town hall had a lot to unpack. I mean, from bold statements made by the INEC and also civil society organizations, amongst other stakeholders. And one of the key things that stood out for a lot of us in the room yesterday, and even many of Nigerians who were watching and listening to the conversation, is that INEC promised that this time around, there would be the best conduct of election. I mean, the best conduct of election this time around under Professor Joash Amupitan. He also mentioned that, however, it won't be 100%, which is, I would say, it's somehow contradictory, and some civil society organization stakeholders had some reservations with that statement he made. As they said, the submission of the INEC chairman of the Commission's preparedness for the general elections does not inspire confidence. However, the INEC chairman also went further to state that he would conduct a mock presidential election to stress test the transmission architecture of INEC's preparedness. And then he also said transmission is not really an issue, but where the issue is with the adequacy of the networks that Nigerians have. He called on how there is need for training for INEC officials ahead of elections. And then also the takeaways from the civil society organizations that were there was that they should reinforce the need for systemic commitment over legislative tinkering. And this is stated towards the proviso that was long debated in the Electoral Act that says allowing the presiding officer to use the form EC8A remaining a challenge, adding that the electronic transmission of the form EC8A to the RF was to forestall manipulation, and that is why the Electoral Act needed to be amended. And also, they also urged citizens to remain ultimate watchdogs. That it's no longer the time for citizens to wait and say they are not part of the process. They need to begin to hold their leaders accountable. And also they called on security agencies and the judiciary to play a crucial role in maintaining the security of elections in Nigeria. Amongst other conversations and discussions that came in yesterday, just towards, as Nigeria is preparing towards the 2027 general elections, and how we can begin to ensure electoral integrity amongst even the electoral umpire, those that are responsible, and all other stakeholders.
All right, Aisha Saliu there from the meeting where the INEC body, and the chairman did clarify and reiterate what they have been saying about the fact that we cannot 100% guarantee electronic transmission of the results, regardless of the fact that that is what the youth have been clamoring for. Well, we'll see how this turns out come 2027. Now, still talking about the elections in sight, stakeholders are calling for a shift from protest-driven activism to structured civic participation among young Nigerians. The call was amplified at the unveiling of a civic platform known as Soft Nigeria in Asaba, Delta State. News Central's Austin Azu reports.
Nigeria's democratic space evolves, analysts say meaningful civic participation remains critical to strengthening governance and accountability. Despite making up more than 70% of the population, youth representation in elective offices has declined in recent election cycles, raising concerns about inclusion and political access. Speakers at the forum stressed the need for mentorship, civic education and economic empowerment to equip young people with the knowledge and capacity to participate constructively in democratic processes.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen,
thank you. They argue that beyond voting, sustained engagement through policy dialogue, advocacy and leadership development is essential to national development.
Youth partnership in governance implies participation in policy formulation and review. That's the essence of Soft Nigeria. It is to interact together, to understand your concerns.
Let me be very clear. Supporting policy and reform understanding does not mean that you are suspending criticism. Explaining government does not mean that you are excusing the government. And engagement definitely is not sitting in your silence. We will support the good ideas, we will question the bad ones, and we will always stand with the Nigerian people.
Today we officially unveil Soft Nigeria. Soft Nigeria is a people-focused civic and political movement built on empathy, understanding, and patriotism. It was born from a simple but powerful observation that many Nigerians, especially young people, feel disconnected from governance, public policy, and political process. Not because they do not care, but because the system often feels complex, distant, and unapproachable.
Participants described the push for structured civic engagement as timely, noting that strengthening democratic culture requires active, informed citizens' involvement ahead of 2027 and beyond. In Delta for News Central, Austin Azu.
Still to come on the news, Rohingya administrative area attack leaves 122 dead. We'll tell you more on this after the break. Do stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. Now in Kano, former member of a state executive council have accused the state government of intimidation following their resignation, which came after Governor Abba Yusuf's defection to the APC. In a statement signed by Umar Ibrahim, the former commissioners said they were directed to return their official vehicles. However, they cited provisions of the revised 2023 Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission Act to justify retaining them. They further noted that a former commissioner for transport had previously been allowed to keep his official vehicle, arguing that the directive amounts to selective treatment. The group disclosed that they have approached the court to seek judicial interpretation of the matter. They also alleged the security operatives later trespassed into their homes and removed personal vehicles. The former officials have urged their supporters to remain calm while the legal process runs its course. To discuss more on this, we're joined by Publicity Secretary, NNPP Kano State, Ibrahim Abdullahi Karai. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. How does the NNPP respond to the allegations of intimidation against the former commissioners in Kano? And this is following Governor Abba Yusuf's defection to the APC.
Okay, good afternoon, Blessing, and thank you for having me. The Kano State government, after its defection to the APC, some of its commissioners who are loyal to the faction, to the NNPP, and to the leader of the Konkosia movement, Engineer Dr. Rabi Musa Konkoso, resigned their appointments. Then after resigning their appointments, the office of the secretary to the government of the state wrote a letter to them that they should bring back their vehicles to the government. But let me tell you, for you to understand, for people to understand what actually happened, those cars were given to those commissioners in secret. Somebody called them and give them the cars and even told them not to come with a driver when they're collecting those vehicles. So they thought those are personal gifts from the governor, even though they were using those cars for their official assignments. But before the governor gave them those vehicles, they stay in office for more than 2 years without having any official vehicle. So they have been using their own vehicles. They have been using their other people's vehicles for their official engagement. So after they resigned and they wrote them a letter, they replied the SSG that they thought those cars were a gift and they thought those cars were personal, were for them. They don't have to return it to the government. So the SSG did not reply them. While they were waiting for the reply of the government, they went to the National Industrial Court to seek for more clarification because of the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission Act of 2023. So as we are waiting for the court to call the two warring parties, the Kano State government wrote a letter to Kano State Anti-Corruption Commission and sent some police armed men to their houses to go and confiscate it, harass them, and intimidate their families, and collected some vehicles that are not even those official vehicles. Some of them got visitors, some of them they collected cars that belong to their wives, which is very unfortunate because it just looks like a robbery. And we don't expect a government to be behaving in such a way. A government should be the first body to be able to adhere to the rule of law. But unfortunately, the government just sent these people to them and they harassed them, they intimidated them, and they just collected those vehicles. And we are condemning that action because we cannot encourage this kind of action in this situation because we're in a political era. People have rights to protest, have right to reject, have right to do whatever they want. Especially these people, they went to a court of law. So while we are waiting for a court of law to take its decision, we don't think anybody is supposed to act in this kind of barbaric direction.
All right, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this matter. We appreciate your time on the news.
Okay, thank you.
Now, officials report that at least 122 people, including 82 civilians, were killed in an attack on South Sudan's Ruweng administrative area on Sunday. Among the dead were the county commissioner and the executive director, while most civilian victims were women, children, and the elderly. The attackers remain unidentified, and authorities have yet to confirm the motive behind the violence. Local officials are calling for heightened security and measures to protect vulnerable communities. The incident underscores ongoing instability in parts of South Sudan, where clashes between armed groups continue to threaten civilians and hinder humanitarian operations. Meanwhile, medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières says 26 of its staff are missing following renewed violence in South Sudan. The organization disclosed that the workers were unaccounted for after clashes erupted in parts of the country, raising serious concerns about their safety. MSF said efforts are ongoing to establish contact and determine their whereabouts. The humanitarian group also called for the protection of civilians and aid workers, stressing that medical personnel must be allowed to operate safely and without obstruction amid the escalating insecurity. Now, there is something deeply disturbing about the direction that social media is heading. A substance designed strictly for cleaning and disinfecting has now been rebranded online as some kind of cocktail. And this is playing out in real time before audiences that include children and impressionable adults. This is not edgy, it's not funny, it's not content. We're watching people go live and simulate or claim to attempt self-harm in front of thousands, and somehow there are no real consequences. Platforms preach community guidelines, yet this kind of spectacle continues to trend. That broader failure of regulation is a conversation that we must have. But today, the immediate responsibility falls on us in the media. In the first place, these brands have even come out to clarify that these substances are harmful. And let's be clear, cleaning agents are not beverages. They contain highly corrosive chemical properties. Ingesting them can cause severe internal burns, organ failure, and you can be unalived within minutes. This is not a joke. It's not a stunt. It's not something to experiment with for clicks. And beyond the chemical danger is the human one. Suicide is not the answer to anything. And we should not propagate it like it's something that is funny. Content is not worth a life. It's not worth yours. It's not worth anyone's. Please stay safe. Well, that's your postscript. Anyway, that is all from the 12 report at this time. Stay tuned on In the Games as we'll be bringing you more updates from sport. Do send in your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen because we want to see what you see. Also follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. Now you can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times 274, Avo TV, and of course live on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Blessings Osugu.